Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I want to say good evening to everyone in attendance and those that's watching us live on stream. I do this work not alone. I do this work with the Board of Trustees. We have Trustee Shelby that's in the audience tonight, so thank you, Trustee, for participating. And all the members of the village and the zoning board members who were a part of the conversation when we first initially started the conversation. So thank you for participating. I'm excited to announce the groundbreaking of the Broadview Community Flats. The transformative housing project that reflects our commitment to building a strong, inclusive, sustainable future for Broadview. In partnership with Black Men United and Right Way Huggins Construction, this 36-unit development is more than just housing. It's a vision for the future, a place where our Gen X generation and mixed-income families will thrive. We are finally here, ready to start building for the future of Broadview, creating jobs, affordable housing, a sustainable, prosperous future for generations to come. This initiative will not only provide housing solutions, but it will also fuel economic growth, encouraging small business development, foster a community where people can live, work, and raise families and retire with dignity and pride. This is what Broadview Strong is all about, working together to create a place where we all can be proud of. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Board of Trustees, the zoning board members, and our residents and dedicated staff. Together, we are building a community that values its past, invests in its present, and prepares for a bright future. Thank you all for support, and let's continue to move forward with strength and unity. Now I will turn the meeting over to Freddie Brinker and Willis Mann, a pivotal in the Black Men United team, for the presentation. If you have questions at the end of the presentation, we ask you to just hold your questions. Let's get through the presentation and we'll address all questions and concern. I do want to acknowledge that Trustee Chalmalavi is here in attendance from the Board of Trustees, so thank you for participating. So I don't know if it's Willis or Freddie that's going to do the presentation, but you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take us all through this, and I know this is a first introduction. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. As the Mayor said, we will have a time for that at the end. Let me plow through the presentation, some of the technical details, and I know I won't cover everything, but I'll do my best. I'm pleased to be here to present Broadview Community Flats. It's a mixed income, mixed use project that I think honors the commitments that of the Broadview Strong initiative, and also models something for the community where we can have a place where people from all incomes can come together, live and thrive, and engage with the community. So we're trying to create a development here that will fit into the fabric of Broadview, both as a physical building and as a tenant population, because ultimately our buildings are more than buildings. They're really homes to people, and we want them to be homes to people in Broadview. And so with that, I'll give a little bit of a background on where we come from and our partners from Right Way Huggins and Black Men United. Pivotal Housing Partners is a large national firm. We have operations in 17 states. We're actually working on closing our first deal in our 18th state in Alabama as we speak. Hopefully that'll happen before the end of the month. We've won awards for design, for community development. We won an Invest Southwest award in the city of Chicago. We've done redevelopment in multiple states. We really try and leverage the excellence that we achieve in other states and other regions to carry over with lessons and learnings that we can apply in new places. But we really understand that we can't be local everywhere. Right? And so what we look for is strong local partners, and we try and develop relationships with developers who have ties to the community and better understanding. And that's why here we've partnered with Right Way Huggins Construction and Black Men United. Black Men United, a nonprofit founded by a Broadview native, to better understand the community. So we get that we can't understand that, and we look to find good quality partners who can help us understand that. I think Black Men United and Right Way Huggins bring a lot of experience in the community. Mr. Huggins has been developing in the area for decades, also working on nonprofits and community organizing. for years and years, and the same is true for Black Men United. They help us stay rooted and help us understand the community so that we can bring our technical expertise and our financial expertise to bring the right development to the community. And so with that, I'll talk about what drove our design and concept. We saw that Broadview is a landlocked community with very limited vacant space. We recognize that density is a key for population growth in a community like this. And we looked at it and we saw that there wasn't a lot of apartment housing available in the community. It was especially new built apartment housing, accessible and adaptable for ADA residents kind of housing available. And so we tried to plug in and meet some of those needs. And so what we came up with was a 36-unit mixed income, mixed use building. The commercial space being there on 13th and Roosevelt Road. It's not shown, but it is in that corner to maximize the visibility of the commercial space. We were able, through a lot of hard work, to meet the parking requirements and to design a building that met with the basic height, use, density requirements of the zoning. It is a planned development. There are some exceptions that were needed, but we worked very hard to work within the framework of Broadview zoning to make it work. You can see the unit mix up there. It's a pretty conventional unit mix, although we did recognize in some of the work we did in the market studies that we did for a need for larger rental units, and so we did weight the 3-bedroom units a little bit more heavily in this unit mix. And there's a picture, again, representative. It's the same one that's down here. And the thing I will say is we are at very, very preliminary stages of design. This is just a conceptual rendering of what the building will look like. We haven't necessarily settled on the colors or the bricks, and there's still a lot of architectural and engineering work that has to go into this building to make sure, that the windows are in the right place and that they all do all the right things. So this was just to give folks a little bit of an image of what it could look like, but there's still a long way to go in the architectural design process. And you'll see this is where we are now in the design process. When we first came to meet with the village board back in December of last year and presented this concept, this was how far we were along in the drawings. So I'd like to give you an idea, it's come a long way, but our next step is really about digging in and designing a building that truly has architectural plans, hundreds and hundreds of pages of details. We're not there yet. But we're really excited to be on the cusp of taking that next step. And I always like to show people a little bit of an idea of the floor plan. This gives you a sense of the commercial space on the corner. We do have a community room and a fitness room for the residents that are there. The fitness room is actually on an upper floor in order to maximize the commercial space available on the ground floor, so you don't see it there. And then the bedrooms are off a double-loaded hallway. It is an elevator building, and we will have 70% ADA adaptable units and 30% accessible from the get-go. Again, we saw a real lack of that in the current rental housing stock. We recognize that there's a need for that in the community, especially with an aging population. And then this is the last example to be responsive to a question that we got recently from the city. And it shows our fire truck turning radiuses. Because of how tightly we fit the parking on there, we wanted to make sure that that the Broadview fire truck could make all the necessary turns to get in and meet all the safety needs. We do have fire hydrants on Roosevelt Road, but it will be a sprinklered building as well. But it's important to make sure that we have fire access everywhere. So we got that done, and I think the last piece here to talk about is the timeline. And I would like to stress that we've, as a team here and working closely with the Broadview staff and consultants, we've worked really hard to develop this site plan. As I said, our original meeting with Mr. Upshaw, I believe, was in June of last year. We worked on it for several months to get it to a place where we thought we could bring the concept forth to the village board. In December of last year, we met with the village board. Then we worked on the concept some more. Then in April, we met with the planning and zoning. Then we worked on it some more. Then recently, a month ago, we went with planning and zoning again with the sort of, the current final product. And we have a meeting coming up with the village board again. So this has been a carefully thought out process. We made lots of changes along the way, both to the building itself and to the site plan to make sure that we got a lot of these details right. Right now, we're looking for that final approval for the plan development, which will get the zoning moving forward. That'll enable us to start architectural design and engineering and some of those final stages. At this point, at the point at which the plan development is approved, the site layout, the unit sizes become sort of final, but there is a lot of details in that final architecture stage. That's going to take us, through the end of the year and into next year, working on the architectural design, getting permits, selecting a general contractor, and lining up our financing for the project. We hope to get those permits, in Q1, starting early next year, and break ground, as soon as it is feasible to get in the ground after the winter. It's a little bit of an aggressive timeline, but we like to set aggressive timelines and do our very best to meet them. And then the construction period for this building is 14 to 16 months. So even once we break ground, before, it'll be a year and some change before anyone's able to move in. We've already heard some interest, and we start, taking names as soon as people show interest in moving in, and get back with people. But I always like to manage expectations. We're really, the better part of 2 years away from the first people moving in. These projects take a long time to come together, and as our friend from Local 1 can attest to, no matter how many carpenters we have on the job, it still takes time to build a building, build it strong, build it right. We have to do all those steps and go through that process. So that's it. I'll invite Freddie and Larry to come up too to take some questions, and I think the mayor as well, if it's appropriate for her, David, to answer anything that comes along. But this is a community meeting to give us a chance to hear from the community. Do we want to just go start to finish by hands, or?
So if we have any questions, if you just raise your hand and I'll come over with the mic and you can ask your questions to the group. Yes, ma'am.
Will this community be rental or condo?
It's a rental community.
It's a rental community.
Yeah.
And just a follow-up question, you said it's mixed income, so is income required to live there? A certain type of income to live there?
You do have to hit a minimum income threshold. Oh, there is a minimum income threshold, and credit and background checks. This is a building that we're going to use income averaging on, and so there will be some affordable units that require a full income verification process.
Thank you.
Yes, we're looking for this project to be mixed use. And when we say mixed use, that means it's going to be residential, but commercial or retail on the bottom. So we're looking to bring in, say, a Starbucks or something of that nature on the first floor there. Questions? Okay.
This is not a Section 8 building, right, or low-income housing? Is this a Section 8 building or low-income housing building?
I don't know, many people don't know the different entities that I sit on. So I chair our housing committee for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And so when we talk about mixed income and we talk about missing middle, we've been working in the missing middle where we're missing income brackets. So to have a nice housing stock for the village of Broadview, because we're landlocked, we have to create something that we can adapt to all income levels, whether it's low or high. So it's not Section 8 housing, affordable housing. It's the language and the terms that interact with one another that have people have buzzwords to take it to another level when it don't really mean that. It's just a mixed use, mixed income, so it's a very diverse income level. So you can have someone that have a high level income that may want to live in a resident and stay somewhere. So the thought process is when you look at our surrounding area, and we're surrounded by Loyola and the VA, and we have a lot of young professionals. We have to adapt to the Generation X, those generations behind us, so that they have adequate housing that can meet today's time, not the times from when I bought my house in 2012, which is a home that's over 50 years old. And so we're looking for younger people to come and reside in these units. Yep, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Larry Huggins, and I'm part of the development team. This building is more about just building a building. It's about building a community and help people from this community to help build this facility. You know, you talked about Black Men United and Reverend Harrell. You know, what you want to do is invest in people. And when we bring people that's a part of this community to help build the community, and they have a responsibility, we have a responsibility to give back. So this is really, I mean, I call it a godsend. When I look at myself, I'm a developer. I started out as a general contractor, became a developer. And I'm also a philanthropist. We have the responsibility of, I'm a master developer of building Ida B. Wells, which is an old housing development on the south side of Chicago. So far, we've built 1,000 units out of 3,000 units, and we made sure that we have far and exceeded every MBE, WBE program, period. And because we have Reverend Harrell that's a part of this community, they're going to make sure that people from this community is a part of that construction. And when I see a guy like Reverend Harrell, I mean, he reminds me of myself. I mean, I'm also a philanthropist. I just did the Chicago Football Classic, game played Saturday at Soldiers Field. And what we do with that game, we invest in young men and women. Because of the Chicago Football Classic, there are more kids now going to historical Black colleges in the history of this city and this state. I also have a program called Christmas in the Wards that I've been doing now for 29 years. Started in one ward, and now we're in all 50 wards. And we're also here in Proviso. As a matter of fact, 3 years ago, we sat down with the mayor and the speaker, and we talked about Christmas in the Wards. So now you guys are doing your own program. So at the end of the day, it's to have this building built in your community is huge, because at the end of the day, like I say, it's about having one of your own, and there's no telling how far Reverend Harrell will go. But we're going to take him, because I'm also looking at doing development in Gary, Indiana. And guess who I'm going to take? I'm going to take somebody from your community over to Gary with me. So I just wanted to say that, you know, Black Men United, you know, when you look at the things that they've been doing across, not only here, but just across this country. And you guys have an opportunity to help make history here today. So, I mean, I can answer any other questions you got, but this is big. And I just want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity. Yes, please. Young lady?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this
Okay.
going to be open parking, or will it be assigned parking?
It would be open parking.
And what is the rent for the apartments then?
We haven't gotten to that stage yet, but it will be open parking. Yes.
My question is, well, the mic ain't here, so.
As we know, as we know, Ida B. Wells was demolished in November of 2002. Is this going to turn into an Ida B. Wells project with low income and mixed income? Because what we don't want to turn this into, although we are happy about the commercial spaces, and we know that we can gather the taxes from that, that's going to be great for us and great for the residents, but we just want to make sure it doesn't turn into another housing project.
So let me address that. So when we did the senior apartments, that was the first thing that came out, that it was going to convert over to Section 8 housing. And so because we control the land, we own the land, so we get the control when we put the redevelopment agreement together on what that would look like for the Village of Broadview. Our intent is not to create projects in the Village of Broadview, because that's not who we are. We are a strong, resilient community. And so we have to build housing that can accommodate a need, the need to create housing for future generations. And so we get to control the land. When you don't have land control, that's when all of these inequities come into place, where they can convert over a period of time to convert over to projects or whatever the developer want to do. But the village board will vote on a redevelopment agreement that will control the land, on how that land is used in the village.
And that was my question. My question was, for the rentals, who would be receiving like the funds, and how would, like tenants, would they apply to the village, or would there be a separate company, a management company managing this?
So we do our own management. So Pivotal Housing Partners will be the manager. So they collect the funds. We are a private for-profit company. I do want to clarify that given the Fair Housing Act, if a Section 8 voucher holder applies and they otherwise meet the credit and background check, we cannot turn them down. But there are no project-based vouchers, which I think is what you guys are thinking of which there are many in Ida B. Wells, because that was a former CHA project. And so project-based vouchers are vouchers that go with the building, and those we will not have. I can say that absolutely and categorically, but because of the fair housing laws, there is absolutely nothing that we or the Village of Broadview can do to guarantee that there will be no Section 8 voucher holders in the building, because we have to honor the Fair Housing Act if...
Well, we can have a percentage of what that looks
Yes,
like.
yes, but we...
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that one piece, because there are those two different things, and what people typically associate with the projects are known as project-based vouchers, and we will absolutely have none of those. If tenant-based vouchers, where the tenant has the Section 8 voucher, we are obligated to treat them fairly as we would any other tenant. So I just wanted to clear up that little nuance, and it's a little nuance, but it's also a big difference.
And another thing about Section 8, the law changed, and if you remember back, Robert Taylor Homes, there was a big lawsuit that the city sued or a group sued. So you cannot build another Robert Taylor Homes, and the purpose of it was to make sure that the community was integrated both economically and also forest community goes itself. So it won't be a Robert Taylor Homes adjacent to those private homes over there. We don't build those anymore. They're just not allowed.
Is there a possibility that this can convert into a condo at any point? Will there be an option to convert it to a condominium at some point?
Go ahead.
Beyond what may be required by the Village of Broadview, our funding will be for a 25-year term.
Okay.
So, after 25 years, I don't think there'll be any requirements placed on it beyond potentially what Broadview might ask of us. But for the next 25 years, it'll be rental.
So just hold on to your unit.
Some of these new builds end up converting into a condo at some point, and they get the renters in there, and then they give them the option to buy at a later date.
Yeah.
But having a 25-year lease or caveat, it makes sense.
Yeah, and we are long-term owners and operators of rental housing, so our goal is rental housing. We have some projects that are over 30 years old and have stayed rental. That's our business model, but this one, for at least 25 years, will stay rental.
And let me just say, when you talk about Ida B. Wells, CHA required us to do a third, and a third. So you had to bring back individuals that lived in Ida B. Wells. We had to bring them back. But if you go look at that community now, They're building all around there. That is probably one of the most stable communities in Chicago. So at the end of the day, economic development is important all around there. They done built the Marianos all up down 39th Street, going all the way to the lake. They're constantly building condos and everything else. So, I mean, I understand the stigma that comes to public housing, but there's some good that comes from public housing. You know, I just want to say that.
Okay, my question is about the parking. It's about the parking. You said it would be open parking,
There
For-
were,
but my question is, just saying a building of that magnitude, and you're going to have open parking?
So I should
It's-
clarify, it'll be limited
won't be
to residents and people
Okay.
frequenting the commercial space. The commercial space will have some spots designated for it, and then, you know, it will be only available to residents in the building. There'll be either a windshield sticker or something.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's not open. Unfortunately, if you live nearby, you will be
Okay.
towed if you park in our lot.
So it won't be a
Yeah, I
sign?
want to clear up the definition of open.
So will it be assigned parking for the
It will-
residents?
We typically do first come, first served in the lot, as long as that doesn't lead to problems with the tenant population. We like to start that way, so, you know, it won't be, your spot is number 17. It'll be first come, first serve in terms of who gets closest to the door, and those kinds of things. And that's-
But John might have 4 or 5 cars, and you have one, and you can hardly get a
Yeah,
park.
and so typically what we do is we limit the number of cars to the number of bedrooms. So you can only have a sticker for the parking lot, if you will, for a certain number of cars.
Okay.
I have actually said this before in this room, if you own 5 cars, this is probably not a very good place for you to live.
I've seen it happen.
I'm just throwing it out there, you know, if you're a
I
car guy,
definitely
you
seen
probably need a garage, right, or a driveway or something.
but there will be sufficient parking for this tenant.
Yeah, yeah. But there are lots of other rules. No, you know, no car washes, no oil changes in our parking lot, you know, lots of other things. If you're a car guy, this is not your spot. Sorry.
Will there be any handicap parking spaces? And if
yes.
so, how many?
Yes. In the handicap park.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, you can see them there. Oh, it doesn't, I thought the slide might, not 9 accessible, yep.
Yep.
9 of them, and you can see the accessible up there.
Okay. Okay, so if each apartment has 2 cars, will each apartment have at least 2 cars they can park in the lot? Well, if they do, we're going to run into needing about 86 parks. You only have 68 spaces. Some of those are going to be commercial, and some of those are going to be handicapped. Where's your overflow going to go? Because if we have them crossing Roosevelt, that may cause an issue if you do have a number of seniors that, you know, live in this complex or building. How
Yep.
will we accommodate them?
I'm not entirely sure I followed your math, but we were able to fit the required parking on for zoning. So, you know, based on the density of units on the site, we did meet the zoning code for both the commercial space and the residential.
So even though it says in zoning that you have enough parks, we don't. We know it from history. You know, we're here at the View. The View requires the senior parking even for their restaurant that's used, it's mixed use as well. And we're running out of spaces, the residents aren't happy with it. What is our backup plan? And maybe we don't have one, but maybe we can come up with something, because it's definitely gonna be needed.
It's something that I think we can talk about. We would love to come up with a backup plan. I think you're right, you know, that it's always good to have a plan B. Yeah.
Can I just say, my name's Pete, I'm from Tuska Associates, we're the Village's planning and zoning consultants. I've been involved working with the developers and the staff. I'm the guy that reviews the site plans and checks the parking and checks the setbacks and all that stuff in the zoning code. So we've had a series of numerous meetings. My primary concern initially was the parking. And we've gone through numerous revisions to the plan to get to the point. The way the parking is determined in the village zoning code is the number of bedrooms. So they've significantly adjusted their plan to get us down so that it does meet the parking requirement. It does meet the parking requirement for the number of units, or the number of bedrooms in the units, and combined with the commercial, the required parking for the commercial. So all those calculations have been done, but you're right, and I think the developer kind of hinted at, they're kind of starting with an open parking, if there are parking problems, and that, I think initially there will be designated spaces for residential versus there will be some specifically for the commercial uses. And then if there's an issue down the line, maybe you can transition to a more, this unit gets number 1 and number 2, and, if there starts to be some kind of problem. But it does, we did a lot of work to get it to actually, initially they did not meet the parking requirement. They do now.
And again, there are 68, at least 68 parking spaces, and there are 36 units. So that also has its advantages because you don't want 100 parking spaces. Then you get the restaurants parked, the cars from the restaurants and the businesses around. So there are sufficient parking spaces for the tenants. If you park there, if you don't live there, then you will be towed.
Have you identified what commercial spaces, like what commercials or businesses will come into that location yet?
So that question is kind of hard to answer only because you don't know. So like we have vacant properties that's on the Roosevelt Road corridor now. We don't know what.
Her question was, do we have an idea what type of businesses are coming to the commercial space on the first floor?
So when it comes to development for small businesses on the Roosevelt corridor, like we have vacant properties that's available now. We are actively working to put tenants in those spaces, working alongside with the business owner. And so Commissioner Upshaw, he does a lot of the economic development as it relates to getting selected businesses to come to the village of Broadview to build a legacy here. So a good example is when we look at the Broadview Village Square. That Village Square we rank number 47 out of 1,500 small village squares in the nation. That mall is 47. And so when we look at that, then we start moving to the Roosevelt Road corridor and like who we can get to be on the Roosevelt corridor, whether it's like the mixed-use housing with commercial or any of the vacant storefronts that's vacant. Like who would be a good business? Because just because a business want to come to Broadview, it's what's best for the village of Broadview. And so a person can want to come, but if it's not what's best for the village of Broadview, then that don't align with our core values on how we look at development and what the future look like for the village of Broadview.
And I would just say for our part as developer, we've been committed from the beginning to finding the right partner. That was one of the first conversations that we had with the mayor and Mr. Upshaw was about, we want to find the right partner that makes our building and the community stronger, not just the first tenant that comes along. And so we don't necessarily know what that right one is right now, because it's 2 years from now that we'll be looking for a business that's ready to launch in that space. It's a long time away for a business owner.
And so a lot of times when you're doing economic development and you're looking at commercial space, we have to look at the data. So like how many cars we have on the Roosevelt corridor, but we just can't look at what's on the corridor. We have to look at an 11-mile radius, looking at the data of the numbers of people that would visit a particular business. So when we talk about what's best for Broadview, we actually look at the data for a small business that can come into Broadview, because not only do we want to sustain with either property tax or sales tax revenue, but we want to make sure that the small business is represented where they can sustain and continue to be here, because what happens is if they cannot afford to pay the rent to the owner that owned the property, they're going to leave, and then you have a blighted commercial like we've had for the past 20 years. And so now we're revitalizing our Roosevelt corridor. You can see the growth that's happening on the corridor, and this project is actually one of the things that people will attract to, because now you're seeing people that's actually living in residence. They can walk to Walgreens. They can walk to a small business that's on a corridor because it's all within proximity of walking or biking. And that's what we want in the Village of Broadview when we look at health and wellness.
Well,
I'm sorry, before you get to the next question, just on the future use, just as an aside, the village is in the process actually right now of doing a long-range comprehensive plan, and one of the pieces of that plan is we're doing a market analysis where we're looking at the economic development's current conditions, and we're basically looking for the gaps. So, you know, what commercial uses are here now, what types of uses are lacking, which we call the gap, and we're trying to identify those. So at the end of this process, we're getting near to have a draft of that comprehensive plan. The village will have a better idea of what uses are in demand and what's lacking and what the village should be targeting for future uses. So just
So
as a-
right here,
will there be on-site management throughout this entire construction? And how will it be advertised once people can apply and wait list prior to, will you do it prior to it being completed? Or will you wait till it's completely done to accept applications for?
So the on-site management question is, yes, absolutely. We'll have an on-site manager and a building service technician, and then augmented by the team. We have a regional team based here in Chicago. This will be our 7th property in the Chicago metro area, so we try and have a little bit of expertise matched up as part of the regional team. And we open applications about 90 days before construction is complete. You know, there are a lot of things that can happen during construction that could make things take a little longer or even end up a little faster, depending on, you know, weather and equipment and all of those kinds of things. And so we try to wait until we really know, so that when we tell somebody you can move in on March 1st, it's really going to be done on March 1st. So we sort of have to wait. Prior to that, we do collect names and that list, and we make sure to reach out to everyone who puts their name on that list. It's just a sign up through a website, but you get notification prior to us doing any public advertising. That's the incentive to sign up for that list. So we don't have that landing page up just yet, but when we do get on that list, you'll get a notice ahead of the general public that it's available.
Just as a side note, our senior housing development located on 17th Avenue, it's only 72 units. We had over 800 people on the waiting list before we even built it. Once it was built, it was over 1,000. So just the FYI as to the need of housing that we have in this community.
My question is, so this is going to be in the vacant lot that's on Roosevelt Road, on 14th and Roosevelt. What about the traffic? Because there's a liquor store right across the street. So is that going to make for a lot of traffic? Are we going to put a traffic light there, not a sign, but a light? And then you have coming from the liquor store, they're going to park where the residents are unless the parking isn't. So how is that going to be assigned?
So that's an excellent question, because when you talk about the Roosevelt Road corridor and you talk about pedestrian safety, so we've had numerous conversations with IDOT, who owns Roosevelt Road corridor. We don't own that. And so once we develop the site, then they'll put traffic signals in place to accommodate the traffic pattern that will take place because of the influx of development. So that's an ongoing conversation that we continuously have with IDOT. And then the yellow.
I would just add to that, we did get that feedback in our initial planning and zoning meeting from some of the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it's one of the reasons we changed or you guys don't know, but it's one of the reasons why we made the driveway sort of a curve that way, to prevent people from driving through our parking lot, using it as an alley, but also to get the exit from the parking lot away from a little bit farther away from where the traffic comes in to that back parking lot for the liquor store. So we recognize the problem. We did our best to game plan around it, and we're really optimistic that light, that signal will go in at that intersection I think for everybody's sake.
Yes, my question was actually similar to the young lady that just asked the last question. By me being right at the corner, and I know I mentioned this before, but this is just an add-on. There's trucks that turns right there. Have that been taken in consideration also, that delivers to the liquor store right there? Because a lot of times when they turn it onto the grass area of my house, and some of them are just missing the tip end of my house. So, and I've had to come outside many times. And also, would that become a residential-only parking for our block? David may be able to answer that.
I mean, I don't know that I could answer the second question about residential parking, parking only. That would be a question
Well,
for the city.
the purpose of this, the purpose of this community meeting is to get feedback. So that's something we will take a look at. So it's great information to have. That's the purpose of this meeting, to get some ideas, because we can't think of everything and we don't know everything. So it's a community project.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge the first part of her question about the trucks. We haven't done an analysis, but based on your feedback about the trucks, we can check the turning radiuses. This is a turning radius analysis for a fire truck, and it tells us that a fire truck can and should be able to make all of those turns. We could do the same thing for a semi-truck. They should be able to make that turn without hitting your grass, I think, but.
Can you leave that picture up? So you see the alley, and the alley of the rear. I'm sorry. Can you go to the podium? Yes, yes. If you see the alley, the very first house next to the liquor store is my house. Okay, and right where the white car is facing, so that's my house. It's a light pole right there. So when you have trucks coming in that's turning left, as you have the fire truck there, they have no clearance. And if there's other cars parked like there, right there where the white car is, they have no clearance to make a large turn where they deliver in the rear just a few cars from that alley. So that needs to be in consideration.
She's talking about on 14th Street.
Right at where the white car is, there's 3 white cars. The one white car is facing my house, okay? So when trucks are turning,
They turn off Roosevelt Road.
they turning off for Roosevelt, where the fire truck is from Roosevelt on 214. So if cars are there, they have no clearance because there's a light pole right there. They have no clearance on how to turn into that alley to deliver the way that they come in. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 large trucks right there at the same time.
So we will take that under advisement. I also will have a conversation with the business owner.
Yeah, because that's a city issue.
So my concern, I am all for revitalizing, renewing our Roosevelt corridor. My concern, though, is that in our zeal to do so, we make sure the maths. And the reason I say that is because we mentioned there are 36 units, but then we also mentioned that each of those units can have a parking space per bedroom. So that, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is because I've been to several events at the Red Door. And as it gets dark, and that's a residential-only street, so the parking is so limited that most of the guests and I were crossing Roosevelt Road, and when it's dark, and you know, you cross a busy thoroughfare like that, you can only cross halfway sometimes, and then you have to wait until the other direction clears before you cross. I guess in saying all of that, I'm just begging us to make sure parking and these thoroughfares are clear. In my house, we're a huge military house that lives on safety and compliance. Those 2 words are huge. And I've seen people get hit by cars. So we have to make sure with this magnitude of a building that we're crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's. But I commend us on making improvements.
Go to this gentleman and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, how you doing? There was a few things that was said that I had a question about. We talked about using data and things like that to determine what kind of businesses come to the community, but most people just shop what's in their proximity. So it's kind of hard to use that data as accurate, data to decide what kind of business would come, because if we bring Chick-fil-A, for example, you're going to have a lot of people go there because now it's accessible, it's closer. So when you use the data just only where people go to determine, what kind of businesses should come here, I'm just suggesting, of course, that we should probably talk to the community to see what they would like to see in these different business and open spaces on the corridor that's been vacant for 20 years. We'd like to maybe do some polling or, put something out to ask what we're looking for, because you're going to typically shop with what's around. So I would go to Walgreens or I would go to Target more because it's closer to my house. But if I had a Walmart option, I would probably go there. So it's just, I think we should just open it up to the community to just get their ideas of what kind of businesses we would like to see, that we would patronize. I think that's not too much to ask, as opposed to us using some schematics or data about where people go, because we're only going to go to what's available. And then also, I was just wondering, would this be something that would be MBE certified, that you would have to get a chance to qualify for the contract? Because I know in the past, typically, we have Caucasian men that come in and get these big contracts and get millions of dollars, and then they hire Hispanic workers. And our community is, I believe, Mayor, 70% black? Is it 70, 60? What is it, 7? It's more than that. So we'd like to see the workers and the people that's going to make the money if this happens goes back into people that looks like us, So that's a couple of my questions.
And let me kind of halfway answer that, if I can. I mean, that's one of the things that I said initially, is that when you have a Reverend Harrell that's from your community and Black Men United that's also from your community, they are part of the development team. And when you have people that's part of a development team, we have a responsibility to make sure that we understand that and deliver for this community. So I can assure you that will not be a problem.
Thank you, Larry, for that. So can I address that?
Well, at the end of the day, if we hire people like us that are the owners, they have a responsibility to make sure that people like you are on the job. And that's all that we can do, is make sure that we have African-American contractors that's a part of the process. And they have the responsibility. We can't tell people who to hire, but hopefully they will do the right thing. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
So thank you for that. So a couple of things I want to address when you talk about the semantics of the data. So when you go into looking at developers, so just hypothetically, you can, and this is public knowledge, you can go to a national brand to see what the requirements are to attract small businesses. That's something that we do. We do that intentionally because we want the right fit for the Village of Broadview. Number two, when we built the Broadview Senior Apartments, we were heavily engaged in making sure that minorities were on that project. We had Broadview residents that was flaggers on the project that called, that live in our community, that were able to work on that project. So we are intentional to make sure that the minority base, specifically Black Americans, are able to be on these projects and work. And so we work hand in hand with the developer on when we look at the criteria of the redevelopment agreement. So all of these things will be laid out with the MBEs and all of those things of what the requirement is. And because part of this project is funded by the state of Illinois, they are required to make sure that these minorities are on these projects. So we don't get to choose who we want, but we do have requirements that we have to meet. And I'm proud to say when we did the Broadview Senior Apartments, we met those criteria for making sure that people that lived in Broadview or the Proviso Township worked on these projects, because it takes pride when people actually see a building that they were a part of and they live here in the community, they are excited. Even when we did the project, the 16-unit, the Housing Forward project, it was the same thing, working hand in hand with Housing Forward on the developer and the people that work here. And we have Broadview residents that actually works at Housing Forward, and they are part of that project, and they take pride in the, it makes them feel good that they are part of something. So I'm happy to say that the Village of Broadview, we are very intentional on making sure that we have qualified people that work with us hand in hand.
I know this may be a moot point, but was it ever considered building this building on top of a garage versus outdoor parking? Is this a zoning thing? Is it a height thing as to why it wasn't an indoor garage? I mean, we do live in Chicago. I mean, Broadview, Illinois.
So I think the biggest problem with an indoor garage on this site was the size of the site, the building the garage around, and then the circulation required for all those poles would have probably cut our parking in half. And so while I totally understand, and live here in Chicago and know how bad the winters are, I don't think we would have been able to, it wasn't worth sacrificing the parking in order to have it indoors. So I think that's the biggest concern.
So if the parking area, the lot area was the building, and the parking was underneath the building, wouldn't you have the entire lot underneath the building? Not just that side of the building with the 68 parking spaces?
Yeah, but you give up a lot of circulation, and you'd be giving up the commercial space on the first floor. You still need entryways and elevators and stuff like that. So I really do, we sort of looked at it, and we looked at what's called tuck-under parking, where you park underneath part of the building. And what we lost in number of parking spaces just didn't make up for it.
And one quick, was it a zoning thing, the reason why the building is only 4 stories?
Yes, that it is the maximum, more or less the maximum height available. So that there was a pressure, we couldn't just keep going up higher and higher on top of the parking.
That's the other factor with parking garages. To make that economically viable, you're going to have to go to 6, 8 stories to make the cost of that. They would have had to get extra. Yeah, it's tall. It's tall.
Yeah. But there's sort of a. Yes, and you can theoretically go up, but we would have had to get a variance to an important part of the building code to go another story, and we were trying to keep it within the confines of the building code as much as we possibly could.
How many elevators are in the building?
Just one.
Just one elevator for 4 floors?
Yeah.
And are we, is the parking, I know you say it's open, but will there be a cost with your apartment?
No, the parking will be included with the unit.
With the cost of the unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll all be rolled into one. We will not be renting parking to anyone who doesn't live in the building. It's for the building residents, so it'll be tied to your lease.
My question is, with the data that you're using to determine what the commercial business will be, is that data going to allow us to get a different variety of commercial businesses, and we don't get another chicken place, or we don't have another coffee shop, or 4 or 5 beauty shops? Is that data going to allow us to kind of get some new businesses?
Yeah, so I think it's really our strong desire to work with the village to find the right tenant. We don't want a tenant that is similar to other tenants because we want them to do well as a business so they can pay their rent. But regardless of sort of what the data says, I think one of the most important things is we need a business that wants to locate there that is the right fit. And so we're going to work hard to find that right fit. But I think that right fit involves not being the same as other businesses, filling in one of the gaps that's identified by the village as best we can.
So as we look toward the future of revitalizing the Roosevelt Road corridor, the corridor should have a mixed-use type of business. It's not just stagnant. So just because we have Chick-fil-A here don't mean it's a good fit on the corridor, because they have a cookie cutter type of situation. So you just can't put a Chick-fil-A in Broadview because of the dynamics. So you have to look at the developer and what their criteria are to understand economic development. The Roosevelt corridor is a mixed development. And we have ordinances in place with restrictions that say certain like-type businesses do not fit in this model on this corridor. So that's in our village ordinance that we already have that on the books, so that we don't cross those lines.
Did you just say it's only one elevator, and why?
Well, one elevator typically, a building that, sorry, typically a building that has in excess, when you start looking at multiple unit elevators, you're looking for buildings that have apartments in excess of 50 or 60. So you just have one, and that's considered a luxury building, really, because you have 34 units and with one elevator. So if you had more than one, then you're cutting down the size of the units and the number of units to support that other elevator. But typically, buildings that are under 50 or under 60 has just one elevator.
I just wanted to ask, is this something that, to the mayor, is this something that we've already decided we're going to do, and we're just getting feedback today from everybody?
So we've had a couple of meetings through zoning to have this discussion, and it was public notice that was put out that the residents could have came out to voice their concerns to the zoning board. The zoning board has made a recommendation for the Village of Broadview for the Board of Trustees to move forward on the project.
There is talk about the commercial spaces, and I just wanted to point out that we may want to think about what we can put in those commercial spaces now, because if there are restaurants, there's a different kind of ventilation that's required. Other than that, the entire building's gonna smell like chicken. So, you may wanna determine what each commercial space is for, and then decide on that ventilation for that spot, so you know you're not putting a restaurant in a retail space.
So when we talked about the commercials, when we talked about the commercial space on the first floor, what we decided is we were going to make a vanilla box, and we're going to value community input, and we're going to look at the metrics. Like example, you have Loyola Occupational Therapy 50 feet away. So when you drop your loved ones off, what are you doing all day? Do you want breakfast? What do you want? We have to look at it. We have to take all that into consideration. The purpose of the vanilla box is, say if we have a Starbucks. So a Starbucks, they typically have it's cookie cutter. They want 2,000 square feet, so we'll put a wall up. And then that will allow us to keep moving with another retail space. Or we may have a retailer that says, we want it all. So, but it's open, so we can make the adjustments, as you said, whether it be ventilation, electrical, plumbing, or whatever we need to. That's correct.
Exactly. And we build the infrastructure there, so if you do need to exhaust a lot of, because you're cooking or something like that, that gets built into the plan, so that vanilla box can be customized to be a lot of different things. But yeah, we don't want the commercial tenants to impact the residents above, and we want the residents above to support the business in the commercial space. So there's a symbiosis there. We don't want them to hate each other.
My question, is there like laundry room or washer and dryers in the units? Or is there a hookup for the washer and dryer? Did I miss that?
There are laundry rooms in the building and washer dryer hookups in the unit. So you have your choice of.
And that's what you call state-of-the-art, looking toward the future. So we're going to take one last question or comment, and so we're going to conclude our meeting for tonight, but I want to just this is the last question.
So I just want to circle back to the parking thing. Was anything considered regarding visitors for the residents there? Where I live at, I deal with parking issues and things of that nature. And I'm assuming if there's 36 people living there, they got family members, they got friends and things of that nature. Was that factored into at all into your assessment?
So I believe it's factored into the it's factored into the code calculation as part of that. It is also, I think, worth pointing out that the spaces on the street on either side are actually not part of the parking count on our property. So That's, I believe that's 13 spaces that exist there. You know, it might be part of the Plan B, but they exist there adjacent to the property. Those are public parking places, so they would not be reserved for our residents or for our guests, but they are right there and available. There's also a city lot across the street. I know there have been some concerns about crossing Roosevelt Road, and I totally understand that that's a busy intersection, but that is also an option if there's need for additional parking, either for the commercial space or for guest parking.
So that concludes our Housing Committee meeting. I want to thank you all for coming out and participating. We will have another discussion at our regular board meeting for the Board of Trustees to make a decision on what direction we will go as it relates to this project. And so when we start talking about development, and many years ago, it was, you know, saying that we need to develop the Roosevelt Road corridor. And so with developing a corridor, it's going to come with some parking. Broadview is landlocked. We have limited parking space, so we created municipal lots for visitors and guests to be able to utilize that. And so now we have a CSO officer that will kind of manage that project for us under the leadership of Chief Mills to outline like the paid parking meters for people to have access to the extra parking. And we will continue to have the dialogue with IDOT as it relates to signals on Roosevelt Corridor because it is a major intersection, but they would not give us the signal because we didn't have the traffic pattern or the pedestrian traffic issues that considered IDOT terms on what's safe for Broadview. They look at casualties, they look at pedestrian crosswalks. So it's a lot of things that they look at, but everything that we do it transparent, and we look at the data, how it impacts the village at large. So it's not like personal for me or personal for any of you that's in this room. It's how IDOT function, and we have to work with that state agency to move the needle a little bit further. And this project will allow us to have that conversation and move forward. So thank you all for coming out. Have a good night, and God bless you.
Thank you.
So I got something in my office for you.
Okay.
I forgot to bring it.
I just didn't want that to be, I didn't want to leave that on.
Oh,